Welcome back, my followers of fear, to another reading from Hannah and Other Stories. Horses. Everyone has wanted one at some point. Doesn't matter what your gender is, you've probably wanted one at some point. Whether to ride off as a knight or a cowboy, or because they are beautiful, majestic creatures. Our fantasies, however, don't always get the truth. Horses can be easily startled. They're not that smart, and sometimes they can be dangerous to people. In this story, if you sell these horses, they are more than just dangerous. They can be quite deadly. So without further ado, let us do an excerpt from Fuseli's Horses. For a little bit of context, some of the main characters are seeing some newly born foals after their mothers all died in childbirth. They've never seen these horses before, and they're a little afraid. They should be. Let us begin. After 4 weeks of continuous isolation, Dr. Calloway finally let her family and the ranch hands see the new foals. Matt and his parents were there too, as was Ivy, despite her newly acquired fear of anything horse-related. It was a problem that cropped up after the incident with the wild roan. Even getting Ivy to leave the house when the horses were outside was nearly impossible. And with no signs of her fear going away, Ivy was having a hard time helping on the ranch. How she would survive until she turned 18 and presumably went to college, none of them knew. Matt exchanged small talk with her and Pam as they waited for Dr. Calloway. They fell silent as she arrived and stood in front of the stable door. Now, just to be clear, these foals are a little different than your average horse, she began, sliding the door open a little and glancing inside. A nickering came from within. Ivy shivered and grabbed Pam's hand and Matt's elbow, hunching down and shivering like she had when the mares arrived. I have to guess it is some sort of mutation passed on through the herd stallion, Dr. Calloway continued. In any case, they look and act a little different, but they are still baby horses. I'm sure you can keep that in mind. Mrs. Bridwell and the ranch hands rolled their eyes and laughed good-naturedly. A few commented that they didn't think a couple of foals were anything to worry about. Matt, Pam, and Ivy, as well as Matt's parents, only nodded, their expressions serious. Dr. Calloway slid the door back all the way. The whole group walked to a large pen in the far back. The walls lined with lengths of plywood, and the floor were covered in straw. One of the lengths of plywood was painted black with white heat streaks. Other than that, the pen was empty. Matt leaned forward, wondering if Dr. Calloway was playing a joke on them. Then the painted piece of plywood broke apart into several moving pieces that nickered and snorted, the start in a shout of surprise. Matt realized the pieces were the foals. Each one was jet black with a white mane and tail, as well as milky white eyes. 7 small horses walked around the pen, heads pointed towards the crowd watching them. None of them approached close enough to touch. My God, Matt breathed. They look really creepy, Pam whispered. They're wrong, Ivy stated with certainty, keeping a safe distance. Even Mrs. Bridwell and the ranch hands looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot and shooting each other nervous side glances. Dr. Calloway, on the other hand, did not seem to find the foals unnerving or notice everyone else's unease. She walked in front of the pen and gestured like a professor to a class of students. One of the foals nickered and walked up to the wall, allowing Dr. Calloway to pet its head. At first I thought the white eyes meant they were blind, she explained, scratching the foal behind the ears. But as you can tell, they see just fine. My theory is white pigmentation throughout the eyes is a genetic abnormality passed on from a common father, as is their unique coloring. That's cool, Matt's dad murmured. He reached a hand over the pen and wall to pat the nose of the foal that Dr. Calloway was petting. Everyone watched with bated breath as his fingers reached towards the little horse. 6 inches, 4 inches, 3, 2. His hand brushed the foal's face. It reared its head back, opened its mouth, and threw its snout forward, aiming directly for Mr. Kraska's fingers. Mr. Kraska drew his hand back as fast as lightning. The foal's teeth came down on each other, producing an audible clack. The other foals let loose a chorus of whinnies resembling laughter. Mrs. Kraska, Mrs. Bridwell, and the ranch hands laughed as well, though theirs sounded forced. "You better be careful," Dr. Calloway advised as Mr. Kraska held his hand to his chest. "Horses as young as these haven't exactly grasped the concept of not biting the hand that feeds them." "So, what are you going to do with them, Harriet?" Mrs. Kraska asked, patting her husband's shoulder soothingly. "You planning on keeping them here?" "For the time being," she replied. "We'll sell them off when they're older," Mrs. Bridwell chimed in, "unless we get attached to them and don't want them to go." She flashed the foals a perturbed glance and realized that no matter how much time passed, Mrs. Bridwell will never grow attached to these horses. "In the meantime, I'll find out what I can about them," Dr. Calloway continued. She reached out a hand to the foal and scratched its ears again. The foal butted its head against her hand and snorted happily. "I'll take blood samples, hairs, whatever I can get, and try to determine the exact nature of their mutation and any other abnormalities these children may have. It could even explain why their mothers all died in childbirth." "Mama Harriet has found herself a pet project," said Pam, her tone suggesting humor. No one laughed. Mrs. Kraska cleared her throat. "Well, anyway, thanks for inviting us over to see the new foals, Harriet. Kathy, we ought to be going back, though. We have to get dinner ready." "Yes, it's about time to get inside and start preparing dinner," said Mrs. Bridwell. "Come on, girls. Harriet?" Dr. Calloway hesitated before following her family, the ranch hands and the Kraskas, glancing back towards the foals every few steps. From the look of sadness and longing on her face, Matt guessed leaving her charges was the last thing she wanted to do. Halfway to the stable doors, Matt spoke. "They remind me of that painting, The Nightmare, by that guy, Fuseli." Everyone looked at Matt. "What do you mean?" asked Mr. Kraska. "Well," he explained, "there's this creepy painting by this Fuseli guy I learned about in art class last year. It shows a demon on a sleeping lady's chest, and next to the demon is a black horse with white eyes coming out of some curtains. The fools look like that horse." As they reached the stable doors, there was a loud clattering bang and a name from the pen. Ivy screamed and ran out the door, disappearing around the side. Another bang and then another. Matt turned around, one of the foals kicking the plywood, as if trying to knock it down. The other foals made that unnerving laughter like whinnying. Matt felt his blood run cold. "Those horses are rather creepy, but just wait until they're older. If you'd like to find out what happens, you can buy a copy of Hannah Another Story. It's from multiple retailers. It comes out on September 23rd, less than 4 weeks from now. So I'll leave links to purchase it in the description and in a pinned comment. And if you like what you read, please leave a review online so I know what you thought. Not only does it help me out in the long run, it'll help out other readers. Thank you. Until next time, good night and pleasant nightmares.